Hi there, and thanks for tuning in to our Wheel and Anchor webinar covering our trip to Costa Rica, an eco adventure. Our trip will start and end in San Jose, the capital, and we'll be embarking on an incredible exploration of what National Geographic describes as the most biologically intense place on Earth. We'll travel through cloud forests along pristine coastline and into the heart of the Osa Peninsula, experiencing the rich biodiversity that makes Costa Rica a true natural wonder. Now, if you're a regular Wheel and Anchor webinar visitor and would like to skip the introduction, please scroll down below the description and you can jump forward to the chapters, which will allow you to access our map overview and our day-by-day itinerary. But if you're new to Wheel and Anchor, let me just say a few words about what we are, because we're not just another tour company. In fact, we are a community of like-minded Canadians who appreciate a different and more authentic approach to travel. We welcome anyone who understands that most organized travel has become kind of a canned experience. If you want to be herded around from one place to another on a hectic itinerary with hardly a minute of free time to yourself, then we probably aren't for you. But if you appreciate the camaraderie that arises from traveling with other people just like you and having enough freedom and free time to go and explore on your own, then you've definitely come to the right place. We have a couple of objectives in mind for those who are part of our community, and specifically, that's to be well traveled and well connected. What do we mean when we talk about being well traveled? I'm not talking about just ticking off boxes on a bucket list, which is not to say there's anything wrong with having a bucket list. As travelers, most of us have some sort of a list of dream destinations we'd love to travel to sometime. I'm talking about the kind of travel that keeps your curiosity, your sense of adventure alive, taking part in experiences that change your perspective on how you see the world. When we dive a little deeper into local culture, which might be nothing other than talking to someone that you meet on a park bench or uh, an employee of a cafe or a museum, when we talk with strangers, start up a conversation, we develop a connection and insight that we otherwise wouldn't have. You have the opportunity to get one of those aha moments that gives you a deeper understanding of what's really going on in a place that you're visiting. We all have someone who we know that we would consider well traveled. And there's a certain wisdom about that person, almost like they know something that you don't. That's what we mean when we talk about being well traveled. And as far as being well connected, well, ultimately, it boils down to making friends that you'll actually want to stay in touch with, or at the very least, go on another adventure with sometime. When you have a crew of fellow travel enthusiasts, it means you always have someone to talk to about travel, because let's face it, travel creates real and meaningful connections because there's always a memory, a story, some shared experience to talk about. By being well connected, I also mean having the time to talk to people other than those that are part of your group or the tour guide or the host for that matter. And when you travel with us, it affords you the ability to connect not only with those people, but with all of the other amazing people that you meet along the way. That's what we mean when we say well connected. As you can well imagine, there's a lot of work in delivering on that promise, but we have a great team here that's dedicated to doing exactly that. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Gordon Drager. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. I'm the curator of all the programs that we have on offer here, and I've been doing this. I've been organizing trips for Canadians to all parts of the globe for coming up 35 years. But I'm not going to talk about the whole team. The most important person for you to know is our lead trip specialist, Paula Zarnick. And she's the one who's going to make sure that you get all your questions answered and have all the information to consider whether to join us on this or any of our trips. Our agenda for this webinar is quite simple. You're somebody that's interested in Costa Rica. You've heard of it. Maybe you've visited it before. It's obviously a popular getaway destination for hanging out on the beach. But maybe you've heard something about its incredible biodiversity or its lush rainforests or their commitment to conservation. Whatever the reason is, Obviously, you're here to find out a little bit more about what Costa Rica has and how we're going to approach our trip there. So, I'm going to be your digital guide today as I take you on a little journey exploring our itinerary and what we can expect to find along the way. So, as usual, a first little geographical overview of what our trip entails, looking at the map. Obviously, Costa Rica in the central part of Central America. We're going to be starting and ending our trip in San Jose, the capital. And from there, we'll head down into the so called Talamanca Mountains, up into the cloud forest, which is where we'll stop first at Sagvegre Lodge, heading on then into Rio Cheripo. We then head out of the mountainous regions down across the valleys and plains down to the Osa Peninsula, which of course is on the southwestern coast of Costa Rica. After we spend our days there, it'll be a flight back to San Jose for our return journey home. One of the things that makes any wheel and anchor trip special is your host. And in this case, we have an amazing host in Martine Rosette. She's been hosting this trip ever since we launched it a few years back because Martine lives part of the year in Costa Rica. She speaks fluent Spanish. She knows the terrain intimately. She is friends with all of the lodges that are on our program and has an incredible an infectious passion for this country. So she is going to be your host. And when we say guide, she's going to be with you for the entire journey. We obviously have naturalists who are going to be explaining about all of the different flora and fauna that we're going to be seeing along the way. So at this point, let's jump into the day-by-day itinerary, and I will let you know all of what you can expect from this amazing trip. Our trip begins in the capital, San Jose, and for those flying from Toronto or Montreal, there are nonstop flights available to get down there. If you're coming from other parts of Canada, you either need to transit through Toronto or Montreal, or there are also flights that go through U.S. gateways to get you into San Jose. It's kind of a technical stop in a way because we need to depart from here to get up into the cloud forest, into the mountainous region of Costa Rica. But it's actually a great stop to acclimatize and get a bit of a feel for Costa Rican culture. The city is a fascinating blend of colonial architecture mixed up with modern development, and the food scene is really something else. If you do get in early enough, you get a chance to get into the city. I do recommend trying some gallo pinto. That's a traditional Costa Rican dish of rice and beans, and it's absolutely delicious. We're going to be staying not far from the airport in an AC Marriott hotel, which is quite convenient, particularly if your flight arrives in later in the day, because we are departing out early the next morning. But if you have the time, it's worth it to take a 30-minute taxi ride into the city center, explore a bit. It's safe enough during the day. During the evening hours, you may want to be a little bit more cautious, but it's definitely something that's worthwhile to do if you have the time when you arrive. Our adventure will begin today as we will check out after breakfast bright and early and make our way down up into the mountains to the southeast, heading for Savegre Lodge. On our way up, we're going to make a little stop at a village called San Gerardo de Dota, which is on the edge of the Los Quetzales National Park. And there we have a treat, particularly for those who enjoy coffee, because we're going to be visiting a coffee plantation where we can learn about the entire production process from seed to cup. We'll observe how they employ sustainable growing practices, the harvesting and roasting methods, and obviously have an opportunity to sample the different coffee for which Costa Rica is obviously so famous. This visit will also give us some cultural insight into the historical significance of coffee in Costa Rica. After lunch, we'll continue our journey, which, as I mentioned, should take about 3 hours, but it is pure scenic beauty. We'll be climbing up into the cloud forest, and the views are absolutely breathtaking. Let me share with you a little bit about the lodges on our trip, starting with Savegre, because they are part of what makes this trip particularly special. Savegre is situated on a 500-acre private nature reserve. It's a family-owned property that's been welcoming guests for the better part of 70 years. The Chacon family arrived back in 1954, and they've made it their mission to protect the stunning Cloud Forest Valley ever since. The location, as I mentioned before, is high up in the mountains at 7,000 feet or about 1,600 meters above sea level, surrounded by this pristine cloud forest. The air is crisp, the views are breathtaking, and the biodiversity, well, as we've said all along, it's really off the charts. Let me talk for a second about the rooms. Well, they're cozy, they're comfortable, they've got all the amenities you need, obviously private bathrooms, hot water, electric heating, and you actually do need heating in the evening because the evenings can be very cool up in the mountains. There's a safety deposit box, but it's the private terraces being in this environment that are so important. You imagine waking up, stepping out onto the terrace and being greeted by the sight of hummingbirds flitting about and just having your own personal nature documentary playing out right in front of you. Of course, the food is always such an important factor on any trip, and you may be wondering what's it like in Costa Rica. Well, Savegre Lodge has really got us covered. They've got a delicious restaurant called Las Bromelias, which has a wonderful mix of Costa Rican dishes and international cuisine. One insider tip, you got to try the trout. It's locally sourced from the Savegre River, and it's absolutely divine. There's some great spots to relax at the lodge when you're not out wandering around in the forests. There's a lovely spa that has some products that are, again, locally sourced organic. There's a lovely bar area as well where you can swap stories about the day's adventures or maybe even spot some birds that are on the feeders that are just outside the windows. And of course, speaking of birds, this is where Savegre Lodge really shines because the reserve is home to over 170 species of birds, including what is the star of the show. And we'll talk about more of that on the upcoming days is the Quetzal. This is one of the best places in the world to spot these beautiful but very elusive birds. So you don't have to be an experienced bird watcher. The lodge has tours that will obviously are part of our itinerary that have expert naturalists that will help you understand and well spot these beautiful little birds and all the different species. One of the things that I also appreciate about Savegre is that they have a very strong commitment to sustainability. They've earned the so-called fourth level of certification in sustainable tourism in Costa Rica, which is certainly no small feat. And they're really, really dedicated to protecting the precious ecosystem that is providing this incredible experience for their guests. It's going to be up early, rise and shine, because we're going to be heading into Los Quetzales National Park to do some bird watching. Inside this one park, we'll find 251 different species of birds, which is an incredible number for any one area. There's four kinds of owls, nine kinds of hummingbirds, another nine kinds of hawks, three kinds of parakeets. But of course, what most are coming for is the beautiful quetzal you can see pictured here that the park is of course named after. You don't have to be an avid bird watcher or any kind of an expert to be amazed by the diversity here. The guide will show us around, help to spot these creatures, and if you are a serious birder, well, you're basically in paradise. We'll head back to the lodge for lunch. We've got lots of options for the afternoon. You can relax and enjoy some of the lodge's amenities, but Martine will take a group of those that are interested on a relatively easy downhill trail walk where she'll give us a little bit of our first insight into the cloud forest and its significance. Either way, we'll join together for dinner. We're actually going to head out for dinner this evening and go to a spot called Alma de Arbol, which is a lovely, a fantastic restaurant using local organic ingredients. We'll say goodbye to beautiful Savegre Lodge and head off towards our next stop, Rio de Chiripo. The distance from Savegre to Rio Chiripo, as the crow flies, is not all that far, but it is a spectacularly scenic ride along windy mountain roads over a course of about 2.5 hours through the area called Cordillera de Talamanca, which is a mountain range that is truly something else. It has volcanoes, the second highest peak in Central America, and part of it to the south even spans the border with Panama. We'll arrive at Chiripo Lodge, which is set in a truly spectacular and peaceful landscape. It's nestled between wooded hills and the Chiripo River and is surrounded by lush tropical rainforests, and the views are absolutely breathtaking. Again, they have a high commitment to sustainability, as does Savegra. And the way that the lodge was designed was providing space for relaxation, rejuvenation, and to connect with nature. And they really have accomplished it. This lodge was our member favorite from previous trips. Let me just talk a bit about the accommodations at Chiripo. The rooms here are a perfect blend of comfort and eco-friendliness. They've got all of the amenities, just like in the previous lodge. And most importantly, they offer stunning jungle views, and you'll fall asleep to the soothing sounds of the nearby river. It's just kind of like a jungle lullaby. I think one of my favorite features about Chiripo is the beautiful pool area. You picture yourself floating in this crystal clear pool surrounded by lush tropical vegetation with the sound of the river in the background. It's a perfect spot to relax after a day of exploration. And if you really want to unwind, there are some intimate hot tubs where you can soak your cares away in the peaceful surroundings. There's also a lot of hiking trails right from the lodge. So over and above what we have in our program, lots of things, lots of places where you can go out and explore and discover some more of Costa Rica's incredible wildlife. I want to say a few words though about the food because, as I said before, it's always such an important part of our experiences at Wheel and Anchor, and this is one of the highlights of staying here at Chiripo. The open air restaurant has stunning views of the rainforest, and the menu is a fantastic mix of both local and international cuisine. They use as many ingredients as possible that are grown right there on the property, so you're getting the freshest flavors possible. All in all, I think that Rio Chiripo really encapsulates what ecotourism in Costa Rica is all about. It's got great hospitality, you connect with nature, they're supporting sustainable practices, which is so important in this day and age. This is a perfect spot to go out and explore the incredible biodiversity of the country. And I think that you'll find that the 4 nights we spend here will be absolutely a highlight of the trip. As mentioned, it's one of the most popular stops on this trip by our members, and it really blends a perfect combination of adventure, relaxation, and immersion in this wonderful landscape. Today's adventure is all about immersing ourselves in the flora of Costa Rica as we head out to the secret gardens. Before we go, though, there'll be a chance in the morning to have an optional yoga session. And even if you're not a yoga practitioner, if you've never even done it before, trying it out here for the first time is something really, really special. But after the yoga, whether you decide to participate or not, we'll explore the gardens with our guide. And when we talk about gardens, we're not talking about your backyard flower patch, but rather a very carefully curated collection of native plants, many of which you won't find anywhere else in the world. Our guide and Martine will point out some different species and explain their ecological roles in the overall biosystem, as well as any medicinal properties that they might have. We'll have lunch back at the lodge. We've got an afternoon off to relax, take a dip in the pool, maybe book a spa treatment, or if you're still anxious, go out on one of those hiking trails that surround the lodge. Today's excursion is a real treat as we head into the Cloud Bridge Reserve. Cloud Bridge is a private nature reserve that's dedicated to the conservation and reforestation of the cloud forest. Now, of course, it would beg the question, why do you need to do reforestation when Costa Rica is so lush? You pass all these incredible rainforests. But just so you know, back in between the 40s and the 1980s, Costa Rica actually lost a huge amount of its natural forest due to logging, and it's taken decades for conservation efforts to get things back to where they are now. The owners at Cloudbridge had been planting native trees and shrubs, which have, of course, attracted a wide variety of wildlife. We're talking about animals like ocelots and margays, jaguars, pumas, jaguarundis, and oncillas. And some of those animal names will be completely unfamiliar to you. A jaguarundi is a small wildcat, but the oncilla, the little fellow you see here, is even smaller. He's also known as a tiger cat. Our guide will help us to spot some of these various examples of wildlife and explain the intricate ecology of the cloud forest. And I'll end our hike at a beautiful waterfall, perfect spot for some photos. After lunch, we've got another treat in store, which is going to be a local chocolate tasting. Costa Rica produces, of course, top quality cacao, and we'll get to taste some different varieties and learn all about the process of chocolate making. I think it's one heck of a great day. Today's visit will take us to Mariposario Casa Alegria, otherwise known as the Butterfly Dome. Costa Rica is actually home to nearly a fifth of the world's butterfly species, but of course, many of them are off in far-flung corners of the jungle that you just can't access without great difficulty. And so the Butterfly Dome offers a unique opportunity to see some of these various species up close. It's an 11-meter high geodesic dome, and it houses a whole array of different species. So it's a great way to learn about the life cycles, the ecological roles. We'll have a terrific guided tour there. After our encounter with the butterflies, we head back to the lodge for another delicious lunch. And then in the afternoon, we're going to try something a little different, a self-applied spa treatment down by the river. We're going to get some locally grown products like sugar stub, aloe vera, and chocolate to either rub on our body or all over our face. A truly blissful experience. And to cap it all off, we're going to have a make-your-own pizza dinner night in a good old wood-fired clay oven. It's a great interactive way to enjoy dinner and chat about all the amazing experiences we've had so far. Today is a travel day, and it's a long one at that, as we make the 6-hour journey down to the Osa Peninsula. But I can tell you the time will pass quickly, because it's certainly not like driving down the 401 between Montreal and Toronto. Every kilometer of the drive is filled with something fascinating, beautiful, or totally unexpected. We're talking about lush rainforests, winding mountain roads, and glimpses of the Pacific coast like you see here. If you keep a sharp eye peeled, you might even spot a toucan up in the trees or even a sloth hanging from a branch. We'll make several stops along the way to break up the trip and to stretch our legs, and there'll be plenty of opportunities for bathroom breaks. Our destination will be Luna Lodge, nestled in the rainforest near Corcovado National Park. And when you arrive, you're going to hear something that might startle you. It's going to be the sound of howler monkeys. They're the loudest land animal in the world, and they certainly make their presence known. Now, Luna Lodge is really another special place on this trip. It's rated one of the best eco lodges in Costa Rica. It sits at the end of the road overlooking the Corcovado National Park and is surrounded by 60 acres of primary and secondary rainforest that are right on the property. There's 3 secluded waterfalls out in the jungle and lots of other amenities I'll describe in a minute. And the Osa Peninsula, this area, is home to over 450 species of birds. This is truly paradise. For those of you who manage to snap a photo of every one of those 450 birds, I'll give you a free trip. The accommodations we've selected at Luna Lodge are the rainforest bungalows because they offer a little bit more privacy. Each bungalow is quite spacious, has 2 double beds, and a private deck with beautiful views overlooking the rainforest. There is a private bathroom, of course, which has a bathtub, a nice amenity to have in the jungle. And what I like about them is these vaulted thatched roofs, which really give it a very special ambiance. We do have another room category available, hacienda rooms, which are actually a slightly reduced price and might be well suited for those who, particularly solo travelers, who are looking for something a bit more modestly priced. Of course, the amenities are all about the environment. It's really designed to be a sanctuary for relaxation, rejuvenation, and of course, exploration. The main lodge has a restaurant, a bar, a library, and a spacious deck, which is great for bird watching and stargazing. And there's this beautiful rock lined pool surrounded by gardens, which is a great spot for unwinding after a day of exploration. And of course, this lodge with the other two is very committed to sustainability, powered by renewable energy like solar panels and hydro turbines. So they do their utmost to make sure that our stay will be as minimally environmentally adverse as possible. Dining here again is an excellent experience. It's another beautiful open air restaurant, and they offer farm to table meals, which are made from local ingredients, some of them from their own organic gardens. So there's a hearty breakfast with tropical fruits and homemade bread, and lunch and dinner features more seafood because, of course, we are now close to the coast, and it really highlights the flavors of Costa Rica. Among the other activities, well, naturally bird watching, but we'll be doing plenty of that on our excursions. But they also have a wonderful yoga and wellness facility here with this great open air platform. One of the pictures at the beginning showed some of our members enjoying some yoga on there. And there's excursions to these waterfalls that are all located within the property boundaries. Today, we're going to go out with our guide and see lots of birds, but lots of other animals too. The Osa Peninsula is one of the most densely populated animal kingdoms in the whole continent of North America. I mean, we're talking about 2.5% of the world's biodiversity, all concentrated in this relatively small surface area. And we're going to see a whole bunch of different varieties, like 4 species of monkeys, like the capuchin, the squirrel monkey, the mantled howler, and of course the spider monkey. But the ones that you'll notice first thing in the morning will be those howler monkeys that wake you up with their calls bright and early. They kind of refer to them as nature's alarm clock. We'll also see a whole variety of birds, some of those 450 I was talking about before. And after all is said and done, we'll head to the beach for some of the most pristine coastline that we'll see on the whole trip. We'll head back to the lodge for lunch and some free time. And of course, there's the opportunity to head out again with a guide to do a little bit more wildlife viewing in the area immediately around the lodge. By the time we get to dinner, we're going to have certainly quite an appetite together after all of the animal encounters we'll have had. On the morning of this day, we're going to head off to a surfing community called Bosque del Cabo. But don't worry, no surfing for us. But kidding aside, of course, if you want to surf, you're more than welcome to try. This area called Bosque del Cabo, or translated as Forest Cape, has some spectacular views over the Pacific Ocean and the Golfo Dulce. It's the kind of vista that makes you want to just stop and take it all in, or maybe snap a few photos for Instagram. We'll have a 2-hour walk through what is essentially a wildlife corridor. The animals feel safe here, and therefore we have a great chance of spotting all kinds of creatures that otherwise might be wandering off away from the visiting tourists. As we walk around, we'll also learn some indigenous stories and interpret some of the symbols. It's a great way to connect not only with the nature, but some of the rich cultural history of the area. By the time we get back to the lodge in the evening, you'll probably want to treat yourself to one of the great spa amenities that they have. But otherwise, there's yet again time for some exploring on your own in those beautiful hiking trails surrounding the lodge. Today is a day to either participate in an optional hike to Corcovado or spend the day relaxing around the lodge. Now, Corcovado is an incredible place. Remember, I was saying before that 2.5% of the world's biodiversity is located in the Osa Peninsula. Most of that is here in the park. The hikes are a bit more strenuous, though, which is why we've made this an optional part of the trip, because there's nothing wrong with relaxing back at the lodge for the day. If you decide to go along on this extra excursion, it'll be a hike of around 4 to 6 hours, led by an expert guide. And these guys really, and I shouldn't say guys because these guys or women really know their stuff. I mean, talking about somebody who can see a very hard to spot sloth from 50 meters away. It's incredible what these guys can spot. There's all kinds of animals here. Many of them are quite elusive. The Baird's tapir, which is the largest land mammal in Central America, is found in Corcovado because they need huge amounts of space. They're also not so easy to spot. The big cats, I talked about a few of them before, jaguars, pumas, ocelots, are found in the park. Also not easy to see, but you never know on a quiet walk through the jungle what one might spot. Of course, tons of other birds and sloths we will undoubtedly see, and who knows, maybe also an anteater along the way. Either way, we'll be back at the lodge in time for lunch and a relaxing afternoon, and we will celebrate our last full day on the trip with a magnificent farewell dinner and maybe a little dancing to some beat of Costa Rican rhythms. Our journey is far from over, though, because we still have a day out to explore some of the marine biodiversity of the area. We have a full day adventure plan, and we're going to be heading out to the Golfo Dulce. Dulce, of course, in Spanish is translated as sweet, and this is undoubtedly a pretty sweet spot to spend the last full day of our trip. It's one of the world's deepest tropical fjords, and it's home to an incredible variety of marine life. We're guaranteed to see at least one of the three species of dolphins that live here. And if we're really lucky, we might even see some sea turtles or a whale shark, which is, of course, a prize sighting for any diver or snorkeler. You don't have to worry if you're a strong swimmer or not. You can always stay on the boat and watch these creatures from on board. But for those who like to get in the water, you have the option to grab some snorkeling gear and get a closer look to it all. After our morning marine adventure, we'll head back to Puerto Jimenez, where we'll have lunch. And it's our last chance, at least as part of the formal part of our tour, to enjoy some authentic Costa Rican cuisine before we fly back to San Jose. The evening will be free because we leave it that way, depending on sometimes there's early departures the following morning. So we can get together for one last chance to reflect on some of the amazing experiences that we'll have had over the past 2 weeks. All good things must come to an end, and of course, by this time, you'll have had made some incredible memories of all of those spectacular sights around Costa Rica, the cloud forest to the beaches, the monkeys, the dolphins, and everything that this amazing country has to offer. You may have time for another stroll into San Jose, but otherwise we will make sure you're brought back to the airport for your flight back home. I just wanted to share a few of the comments made by some of our members from past trips with us to Costa Rica. Cliff and Sherry from the Okanagan Valley said, "We loved all three locations. Our favorite was Rio Chiripo. Loved all the birding and nature. The hosts were amazing." Susan from Toronto, on the other hand, said she loved the birds, the wildlife, and the scenery, and that the hosts, Martine and Jason, who's actually one of our local guides, were fantastic, knowledgeable, and fun. Janice from Caledon, Ontario, said she really enjoyed the mountain lodges and being surrounded by nature. The group and Martine were great. Finally, Carol from Bolton, Ontario said, "So many highlights. Other than the amazing scenery and wonderful lodges, Martine put her heart and soul into this trip. She is so proud of her adopted country and wanted us to see the best of it. Our group gelled together within the first day, which really added to the whole trip. But that was just luck. Or maybe Wheel and Anchor did some kind of vetting. I also learned tons about birds from the birders in the group. And we don't vet the members of our trips per se. We do have criteria, of course, for those wishing to join us, because we want to make sure that it is a truly like-minded experience for all who choose to come along. If anything I have shared with you today has inspired you to consider joining us on this terrific trip through Costa Rica, then you can get more details by visiting our website. The link to the webpage about our Costa Rica trips you'll find in the description below the video on YouTube. And on that webpage, you can also download our trip itinerary, which is a lengthy, detailed brochure, digital brochure, where you can find all of the details that I have talked about today. We also have a trip-specific reference guide. It's kind of our FAQ to introduce you to some of the more logistical specifics and things you might need to know before choosing to join us on the trip. And finally, if you'd like to join us on this trip, then please do drop us a note to the email address, or of course, give us a call. We're also happy to answer any other questions that you might have that are not covered in all the materials that we provide. Thanks for joining me on this little digital journey around Costa Rica. As they say locally, pura vida, which means pure life. But it's really more than just a saying. It's a way of life that I hope that you'll take home with you if you decide to join us on this trip. If you would like to see more webinars on trips as we release them, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. Otherwise, I hope you'll consider joining us on one of our trips, or certainly on one of our upcoming webinars. Thanks very much.